Hello, welcome back. It is week 125 on Out on That Line. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Jeff, I am young, dumb, and full of complete respect for the process that is reviewing music. And we're going to do just that today on our show. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm do- I'm doing really well. If you folks haven't guessed, there's two albums we're going to be talking about today. The first one, Tyler Childers. I'm so glad I picked the right side there. Like in the
I was
camera,
hoping you'd watch that.
I was so nervous. Tyler Childers, Rustin in the Rain, and Olivia Rodrigo, Guts. Now, the reason we're doing both of these albums is because, well, they came out kind of at the same time. We are in an embarrassment of riches right now with music, and we want to get these thoughts out there while the albums are still fresh for you folks, because next week is another big one. The week after that is another big one. So we just kind of got to get these things in when we can. Now, the Tyler Childers and the Olivia Rodrigo, neither were very long albums. So it works pretty well to do the discussion around both of these. And I think we're going to have some things we can probably talk about both of them at the same time. Hopefully, this is not a completely separate talk about one then the other discussion, because I think there's a lot to say about the quality of both of these albums and how they came out at the same time and kind of what it means for music these days. What do you think, Alex?
I think chocolate and peanut butter are finally together. And that should be the approach of this episode because you're right. There are a lot of talking points that intersect, and there's a lot of differences and a lot of takes. I'm excited to get into it. We've had conversations like this before, and people can hear those conversations. Just in case they weren't aware, we'll get this done off the top. You go to youtube.com/C/out on that line. You guys, it's never come this early in the episode, okay? Here, we're getting them all out of the way. Frank Zappa, you're welcome. That's a bit, and you'd know that was a bit if you ever went to the friggin' YouTube channel. You're not supposed to swear in the first 10 minutes. YouTube is a prison. And you can lock yourself in a cell with us at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, notifications. Yes, youtube.com/C/out on that line.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
As always. Yeah, it felt good to get that one done so early.
Yeah, she's out
So,
now.
so the way I kind of found out about these, like the Olivia Rodrigo has been anticipated as soon as it was announced. It was kind of like known that's going to be a big deal when it comes out, and everybody was very curious. What's she going to do with her sophomore effort? Because we've seen a lot of tries at the second album and a disproportionate amount of failures when it comes to that second album. It's kind of a thing. The Childers, I was honestly kind of caught by surprise. It got announced and I saw how soon it was coming out, and he came out with Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven like not that long ago. So I wasn't really expecting a full new album. Made a little sense that it was under 30 minutes. What was it, 28 minutes or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just seemed to mesh perfectly. They're both like two artists that we talk about all the time on this show. The albums they've come out with have been set up as like examples that we kind of judge other albums by. So both of these artists coming out in the same week is a big deal in the industry because they're very separate forms of music, but both, I think, kind of top of their game talents in each of those industries. But they're important for the podcast because we started doing Tyler Childers early on. Her Olivia Rodrigo's first album, Sour, was, I think, one of our more popular episodes early on when that came out. So it really, they've both contributed in their own way to the success of the podcast because one, they make very interesting music. It's easy to talk about, and they've really made their way in the industry. They've become very, very popular artists in their own right. I think Olivia Rodrigo kind of far surpasses Tyler Childers in that, but in his world, he is A-list, A-plus list, like whatever you want to call it. He is one of the kind of voices of this generation in country.
Well, and what's crazy about it, and I did want to bring this up, so I'm glad you did. If you look at his footprint on the internet, the mainstream press, like the industry, capital I, he's like a ghost. You don't find people doing like Pitchfork reviews and YouTube reviews and stuff like that. It's for his like S tier as his talent is, and for how much people in the know love him. He's not getting out there to the normies because there's just like no, like the one interview or review that I found that was of any kind of substance was a website called Saving Country Music.
I know exactly what
You
website that is. It is problematic. So, more often than not.
you have hit upon it, sir. And as you coined on the before in the pre-show, Tyler Childers is a woke king. So people have some interesting takes on him from that perspective. We got like two different things going on. We got Try That in My Small Town on the total right. We've got the
Mhm.
Fudge Rounds in the middle somewhere lurking around, and then we got
Yeah.
Tyler Childers. It's quite the embarrassment of riches.
Embarrassment for a couple, for a couple things you just mentioned. That's
You know.
that's for sure. He did with this album, the song "In Your Love." He came out with a music video for it that was two minors, both males, falling in love. Like it was a love song, and when you listen to it, lyrically, I don't think there's much that would tell you one way or the other if it's like a heterosexual or not relationship. But the music video, I think he saw an opportunity, and this is, I think, where character means something. And you can set aside the talent, like the musicality of what he does. That's like bar none some of the best anybody's doing these days. But when you have an opportunity, you could just play it safe and just do a love story. Nobody's going to fault you for that. No one's going to think of that as a safe choice, because a lot of people don't think of what the alternative is, because they're just so used to seeing it one way on their screens. And him choosing to make it a story like it was in that music video, and it was really well done. I mean, it was a really beautiful music video. A lot of people were very upset about that, because they were like, he shouldn't force his views on anybody. It's like, well, why can't you just, you don't have to participate in that. Why can't you just appreciate that two people have found happiness? That's kind of the way I think he looks at it. That's the way I look at it. And I think in general, I think the people that I choose to spend my time with are going to feel that way as well. And I think him choosing to make those statements, um, Long Violent History, an album he came out with that was simply instrumental into the very last song, and basically kind of, and went along with an interview he did where he basically just said, what if it was us? He's speaking about violence against people of color by the police, by, generally just the kind of systemic racism in our country and how that affects them in such a negative way to this day. Started when we got here and has not stopped since. And I think him choosing to speak about those things and saying, think about it from your perspective. If that was you, how would you want the world to act? Would you leave it? Would you think that it's right for everybody else to leave it to be your responsibility to fix the wrong things that are done to you? No. And I think he's trying to point out, like, this is not a fair situation we have going on here. If we're truly going to be successful and independent as people, and truly free to be who we want to be, we have to address these things. You have to put yourself in their shoes so you can gain the perspective necessary. And I think him being willing to step out on those limbs, there's a lot of artists that do it at his level of popularity, and knowing just how many people are going to hear that music, it is brave to say that kind of thing.
Tyler Childers had an opportunity where I don't think he is congratulating himself for doing
Mm-mm.
this, right? And I don't think he's like, I really stood up for justice. I think he looked at having an opportunity and went, you know, this is a normal love story. As what do you want me to, you want it to be me and some white lady in the music
Mm-hmm.
video like they would have done in the 90s? We have an opportunity to represent something different, and why the fuck not? Because they don't have that kind of representation in this genre typically, and fuck it, they deserve it. So he does it. He's in a position to do that. But this idea that he's like rubbing it in anyone's face, like if you feel that way, again, that's a good litmus test for you. If you think having a gay themed music video to a country song somehow devalues country music, and is Tyler Childers shoving sexuality, not even his own, but just like homosexuality in your face, time for a good hard audit of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah. And I mean, at the very least, you should just not care what
Yeah.
anybody, if people are doing that. So I think really important that he made that statement. I think he probably just, like you said, saw an opportunity, and he's very, very intelligent person as well. I mean, you can just tell with the way he puts together his lyrics and kind of how he structures the songs and the themes he uses. Like, he's a very intelligent man. Critical thought is the name of his game. It really shows through in his music. But on the same token, critical thought, and I think as much as he provides some social awareness, I think Olivia Rodrigo with this album is providing a lot of self-awareness. And I think a lot of what you miss in this very mainstream popular music, and while I will always appreciate a Dua Lipa and future nostalgia, just like this kind of 90s disco party. Like, that's great because that's the kind of music it is. To have an album that's honestly, like, this album is probably going to start doing like Taylor Swift numbers, as it goes on, because it's getting stellar reviews everywhere, and it's got a billion listens already between all the songs on it. And I think when you hear the songs, there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of talking shit about other people, but there is a whole lot of talking shit about herself too. And I think having it be so relatable, and where you might think that this has got to be such a perfect life, to be a pop star and be talented and kind of on your way up, there's a lot of things that are negatives about it. And I think where she could sit there and whine and cry, she talks about a lot of it being kind of a lesson learned. Well, I got duped that time, but next time I'll be ready for it. And I think it's the attitude, knowing, like, that comes through in the songs, knowing that she's going to kind of go on her own path. It's always probably going to have some sort of like pop punk leaning sort of sound to it, because it seems like that's kind of her niche that she's found. But I think as long as there is still that self-awareness, then she's going to continue to have successful releases like this.
Yeah, there's a self-awareness to it and a relatability to it, I would say. So, Bay of the Pod, BBG, is a Swiftie. It's come out that
Mm-hmm.
she's a Swiftie, and, I appreciate everyone's thoughts and prayers, and I am dealing with it on my own way. Um But she said she was, like, speaking on behalf of, like, all women who love Taylor Swift. She was like, "You find Taylor Swift when you're 15, 16 years old, and it's like she's writing this music for you." And I'm like, "She writes about, like, losing her virginity in an apple orchard to Leonardo DiCaprio or some shit. I don't fucking know." There's a 10-minute song about Jake Gyllenhaal fucking her over somehow. I can't abide by this stuff. How is that relatable? That's all, like, weird pixie dust horse girl stuff. Olivia Rodrigo, child star, who then, like, parlays that into a first album that was, like, great, and then a second one that gets, like, way more daring thematically, and, like,
Mm-hmm.
it could have easily been like, oh, I don't mean this in a creepy way, but, like, a girl is trying to position herself as, like, a grown ass woman, and at
Mm-hmm.
no point does it feel like she's being a pretender, because I think being a child of the industry ages you up. So I
Mm-hmm.
think she's seen some shit and experienced some shit and lived some shit that gives her this ability to carry this off, like, very faithfully. I don't sit there and go, like, what the hell does she know? She's just talking out of her ass. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a real self-awareness of what the limit is and how she could easily spill over it, and she doesn't. And it's just that pop punk, she's pushing that envelope. And that, I think, allows her to get into some of the grittier stuff. She can still do beautiful, like, soft pop ballads,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also got this, like, very playful pop punk side of her, and it's great.
Yes, and I think she's doing herself a huge favor by continuing to stick with the ballads as well, because she makes, I mean, the first album had Brutal, Good For You, like, had these just like bangers, that just like energy, 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 and were fantastic. And this song has a couple of spots like that, but it really, I think, goes a little heavier on the more kind of ballad side of things. And I think that's to her like great benefit, because I don't know how much of like straight up she writes the lyrics. I know she's very participatory in the whole process, But as far as like how the lyrics are structured, even if she isn't the one that like fully comes up with them, which I think she only writes with one other person. So I mean, she's probably pulling a lot of weight here, regardless of how much he's doing. But it's the way she can deliver them. I think is she really is good at putting emotion through her voice, and I think that's a really, really that's a theater type of thing. That's like a musical theater thing. That's being able to get someone to connect with you when all you have is your tone. And I think that's a really, really important skill that she has that she probably learned because she did the High School Musical things. That's where she came from, right?
No, High School Musical was before her time. I don't know. I think she was on like iCarly or some shit like that.
I think there was a million High School Musicals. There was like they turned it into like a movie, and then they did another show based on the movie version of it or something. It was crazy.
Oh, Saved by the Bell, the new class kind of shit. Okay.
Yes,
I
yes,
see.
exact. Yes, that way better. Probably much more understandable explanation for our audience than what I was trying to
They're
say.
like, "Oh, yeah, right, right."
Yeah, she was on something like that. So I think she had that like that kind of performance background, which really I think helps a lot with this because I think in order to sing music like this, you have to mean it. It's going to sound, pop music already, just its sheer existence, you're already at risk of whatever you're doing sounding fake, contrived, just sounding like something a million people had done before. You have to bring something unique to it. And the only thing really unique you're going to have is you. So whatever it is that if you can put you through your voice and be somebody that people like and that are, care about what happens to them, it's going to come through in the music and you're going to be successful. So, I when I this album got announced and when it was coming close to release, couldn't help but think of Billie Eilish. Couldn't help but think of like several sophomore albums that I felt like were not nearly as strong. Not saying that they were all terrible, but just not nearly as strong as the debut. This album to me, I think, is even stronger. Because I think I don't know if I and this is I don't know if this is going to be a good explanation. I don't know if I like songs on this more than I like songs from Sour, but I think the fact that this album was a step forward for her in a very meaningful way. This was a step towards like not just being a pop sensation, but being a real like artist, being somebody that like people are looking forward to what you create. It's not about the next banger and you're listening to it because everybody else is going to. You're making something that you're going to keep going back to, just like she did with Sour. I think this album is going to be the exact same thing, and probably even bigger because I think it's more solidifying a reputation that was already built instead of having to completely build one.
Well, and she found a lane. I don't wanna, like, pigeonhole her to it's her lane, but the pop punk, I think she's clearly having a ton of fun doing it. They're fun songs, and she's really good. She's really good at it. It's a classic pop punk sound, and she just skates right into the middle of it, and then, like we were talking about before, she really does still hold in regard those, like, pop ballads that she can do. And it's funny because a couple weeks ago we were talking about it and we were like, the Olivia Rodrigo album, you know, we might have seen all we're going to see. And it's like, I guess, like, shame on us because this is definitely, I would say, a big leap forward and not the stuff that was on Sour that was great. And I wouldn't say it's any better than this or this is any better than that. I think this is a more complete album, despite the fact that there are those wild swings between the pop punk and the ballads. But the pop punk ones feel a little more grounded and fun. And then you have like Vampire. Vampire, I buy it because
Mhm.
it's not just like a songwriter came to her and was like, it's a tale as old as time, and it's good. We're gonna write you a hit record about somebody bleeding you dry like a vampire. Like nobody came, you can tell nobody came to her and was like, yeah, let's take like the oldest trick in the book and make a song out of it. The way she sings it, the way it's written, and the way she sings it
Mhm.
when like she's got a voice. She's not a manufactured like pop idol. She's got an identity. She's got a voice in the sense that she's got an identity, and she's got a voice in the sense that she's got pipes for days. And this album like is a huge move forward in showcasing that.
Yeah, this and that song like took over the world. I mean, that was like Driver's License was. It just all of a sudden was everywhere all at once. And it really, I think, showed like that's such a cheesy way to look at it, right? You're bleeding me dry like a vampire. Like you better make that song good. If you're going to use a
Yeah.
metaphor like that, like you better make that song good.
And she did. I buy it, you know?
Yeah, and she made it great. And I think that's why she is so great is cuz none of these are new concepts. You know what I mean? I think the fact that people our age can relate so much to music like this or at least appreciate it is because when I was growing up, I liked Bruce Springsteen, but I didn't really connect with Bruce Springsteen until I was, probably late 20s and kind of had seen some shit at that point, in life. And I think because we've already gone through these like emotional teenage problems, early 20s problems where you really like someone, but you're too much of a chuckle fuck to really do anything good with it. It's like I think all of these emotions are familiar to those of us that are older than this, so we can still relate to this. And I think she doesn't make it so literal about like specific situations. I think she talks specifically about people, about the emotions that are involved, but not necessarily something that's going to take you out of being able to relate to it at all. I think a song like Vampire is again a great example of taking something that probably a million people have done and just making it something new. And she's got so many examples of that all over the album. The from basically from making the bed. What a like clever song. It's like talking about a routine, but it's, now I've made my bed, now I have to lie in it. Like it's a recognition of like this whole thing kind of sucks, but it's my fault for getting myself into this, and I think that's that self-awareness I was talking about that really separates her, I think, from a lot of other of her contemporaries in the industry right now.
Well, and it's funny. I wish I could remember the song. I know it's towards the back half, but she references. In fact, it might be the last song for all I know. But she references, "When am I going to stop being wise beyond my years and just be smart? When am I going to go from being, great for my age to good? Or
Mhm.
not a direct. You have the lyrics in front of you. You want to hit us with those?
Yes. When am I going to stop being wise beyond my years and just start being wise? When am I going to stop being a pretty young thing to guys? When am I going to stop being great for my age and just start being good? When will it stop being cool to be quietly misunderstood?
It's just everything she's dealing with. It's a thesis in like 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Everything she's dealing with on the album, in life in general. Because it's easy to sit here and be like, on the episode we did about Sour, we were honestly like, can you believe that a 19-year-old came up with all of this? And it's like, now, yes, I can.
Mhm.
Like I never, you think it's complimentary to be like, wow, for her age. And it's like, no, at this point, you kind of have to acknowledge it and you have to put her up with anybody else. I don't know why the first person that came to mind was Margot Price, but she did. Casey
Not a bad
Musgraves,
yeah, not a bad place to not a bad place to go, honestly.
Taylor Swift, you have to acknowledge certain realities. And the
They
fact is she's like as popular as,
yeah, they don't apparently they're not fans of each other.
well, it makes me like Olivia Rodrigo
That's
a
what I'm
little
saying.
more.
Yeah, apparently it had to do with on the last album how Olivia Rodrigo is kind of just like forced to give out all those songwriting credits to other people because some of the songs sounded like somewhat similar. And so
Mhm.
she got a bunch of pressure of like, "Oh, be a strong woman and give credit to these other women." And apparently it was Taylor Swift that kind of spearheaded that, and she's just known for that. I mean, you can't even put up like YouTube covers of her songs without her like getting your whole YouTube taken down. Like
Yeah,
it's
but
just wild
yeah, but
how hard she goes in the paint with that stuff.
Jeff, she writes the songs that an entire generation of ladies, it's written on their hearts. She can do whatever she wants. If she's an asshole, which apparently she frequently is, I've come all the way back around again. I was like, boo Taylor Swift, and then Fuckface or whatever that album was, Playful Secrets. I don't know. The one I reviewed solo. I was nice about it, and I was complimentary to her as a person, and now I'm realizing she might truly suck ass.
Yes,
So,
I think the curtain's about to come down pretty soon on that
we
whole mess,
already
yeah.
lost Lizzo. The center cannot hold.
As far as like the musicality of these albums, like they on it, obviously could not be more different. And the difference though between Sour and Guts is not like the difference between Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven and Rustin' in the Rain, or even Purgatory and Rustin' in the Rain.
Mhm.
The jump to like straight up 90s country that Tyler Childers made to go to this album. It's like where the Olivia Rodrigo stuff feels nostalgic for my like kind of high school pop punk days and kind of that emo era. The Tyler Childers like makes me think of being at my like daycare and they're listening to Froggy 100.9, and it was the old, you'd hear just like Garth Brooks and George Strait and like all this 90s country. And this was, I think I love that Tyler Childers just does his own thing because this feels so classic, every bit of this. And I kind of felt like that was going to be the case. I was like, well, Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven was a great album that was clearly an experiment. That wasn't, I don't think, what you'd consider like a true LP from him. And this one I figured was going to be. And I think the same way that Sturgill took a left-hand turn going from, like High Top Mountain into meta modern sounds and country music, and then jumping to Sailor's Guide to Earth, and like how he just sonically became completely different album to album. I think Tyler Childers is following that same path, and I really, really like this album.
Yeah, I turns out not even just for the woke king stuff, but Tyler Childers' music is very polarizing in the sense that, like, I'll admit, I was cruising through Reddit, through the forums, trying to see
Mm-hmm.
what the takes are on the new album, and his music's incredibly polarizing. More than one person talked about how hit or miss he is, and I haven't experienced that because I'm just a homer through and through. If he lays a stinker someday, I can admit it, but he hasn't missed for me yet.
Mm-mm.
And what is so cool about it to me is that it is also different. I disagree that Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven wasn't like a serious LP. It was more of an experiment. I think there was an experimental component to it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was conceived of first and foremost as an album. And then he was like, ooh, do it a couple different ways. That's how it reads to me. It reads as very complete. And so does this at a third of the, or like even at like a sixth
Yeah.
of the running time.
Yeah.
If you're taking all three parts of Can I Take My Own Seven together, um, it's just, it is all killer, no filler. It's got the 90s country, but it's also got like the Nashville sound, like the,
Mm-hmm.
Dolly Parton, dare I say some Conway Twitty
Mm-hmm.
finds his way in through the cracks, and not in a like shitty, jokey way. It's not like a tongue in cheek, well, golly, I'm doing my 90s country tribute. It's, I think, just like when I say the flavor of the week, I don't mean he's, you know, fickle about it or anything like that. I think he's just like, what if I tried this?
Mm-hmm.
What if I did this? And he's just, his whole thing is about playing around with convention, the music video, the types of music he makes, the influences he taps into. So it's refreshing, especially in contrast to Olivia Rodrigo, who did a lot more of the same, just better, and it worked great. So
Mm-hmm.
again, taking these two together is, peanut butter and chocolate are finally together.
Yes. And I felt like um when Sturgill came out with the Ballad of Dude and Juanita, that was such a different kind of album than what because he was coming off of Sound and Fury before that, and that was like a rock album. It was really, really good, but just complete everything was completely different. This one gave me that same vibe where it was like you could tell it was very influenced by a certain kind of era of music, a certain kind of genre, but none of it felt like contrived or cheesy or like just kind of a ripoff, or that he was doing anything other than fully appreciating what that style of music has meant in his life and doing his best rendition of it. And when Tyler Childers is doing his best rendition of anything, it's going to probably come out pretty damn good. I think a lot of credit also has to be given to the Food Stamps, which is the band that he plays on this album. It's the one he was playing with for the Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven tour. Um, and I think, was it called Let the Hounds Out tour, something like that. I can forget what the tour was called, but it was for that album. And that band, I'll tell you what, they're monsters, absolute monsters. They can literally play anything and play it just so well that I think he was not asking a lot of this band to play the kind of songs that they were playing on this, but they are so crisp and tight with everything that you could have put this on the radio in the late 80s or 90s and it would have sounded just fine. It would have fit in perfectly. And I feel like it's hard to do that, to have a throwback sound and have it not sound kind of cheesy. Like, I don't know if you remember like Joss Stone. She came out and it was like, oh, listen to this new age like soul music, and it's like, yeah, but it's not original. There's nothing, all they're doing is just more of that, or anytime you hear, like, that's kind of one of the issues I have with Blackberry Smoke sometimes, is that they're a blast to listen to, but it's not really anything new. I think it's just kind of taking a sound that's already existed, maybe polishing it a little bit, making it a little bit more fun, but it's just, there's not much like overall super interesting about it. I think it's really well done for what it is. Something like this, well, both of these albums, but specifically the Tyler Childers, being able to kind of draw that sound and not have you question at all the validity of it. I think that is where the talent that he has truly shines through, because he's not going to do anything he doesn't fully believe in, and that makes believing in the music just so easy.
Well, let's put it this way. I believe in both of these albums, so much so that I would have to say buy them. And I know I ain't got to tell you that, but I got to skedaddle out there and pick both of these up. I think the people should too. Again, we're talking about this concept of reviving a sound versus, and like playing straight into it versus like using it as inspiration. And you could argue that Silk Sonic is just kind of digging into an old sound and just doing it. Like a lot of their songs, again, fit very comfortably into that kind of Motown vibe. The difference is what they're doing. They are consciously making it an act. It
Mhm.
is tongue in cheek, and they're taking it completely seriously, but they're just having fun with it. And it's why the music, it's got a great foundation, and then it's what they're bringing to it. And I tend to agree. I think that Tyler Childers is taking a little bit of a different tack with that. He's not just building one of those songs. He's kind of like drawing upon those kind of songs, and it's informing what he makes. So it's not a conscious effort to be like, it must be like this. That's how it
Mhm.
feels anyway. And then Olivia Rodrigo, the sound on her album fits very comfortably into the early 2000s, but totally belongs in 2023. I think they both are wildly, wildly different taken together. It was a great experiment. I'm glad we did it. It's a straight up buy it for both of them.
They should duet.
They should tour together.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for Tyler Childers like pop queen era, and I'm ready for Olivia Rodrigo's like down home country area.
See, now there's an interesting question. Which one of them do you think would be more successful at crossing over to the other person's gimmick?
Oh, Olivia Rodrigo to country, the
Doing
100%.
country?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Tyler Childers is such a weirdo, and you put him up on stage like that in the bright lights, and he's got to try to like dance and sing. I feel he's going to get uncomfortable real quick.
Or we're gonna get uncomfortable real quick because he's gonna get super into it, and it's gonna be like a David Lynch movie.
Yeah,
He's just taking over. Just
I think Olivia Rodrigo would go like full rhinestone cowgirl for sure, and just like completely embrace that, be like the next Dolly Parton.
let's get her with Casey Musgraves. Let's make this
That's
happen. I think the two of them
yeah,
should work together.
yeah. That I mean, I think she'd run circles around Casey Musgraves vocally, but songwriting, getting those two together would be fantastic.
Hey, Casey Musgraves is trying to lean hard into the pop, Olivia Rodrigo wants to dip a toe into the country. If she does, then there's no better
Mm-hmm.
combo, if you ask me. If you're asking this guy's opinion.
Well, what if she like sidled up to Dolly? She was like, "Hey, I want to be like the next version of you. How do I do that?" Taylor Swift would be so pissed
Oh yeah.
because
Taylor
I don't
Swift.
think Dolly gives her the time of day. I think she knows.
Dolly ain't no fool. You don't get to
No,
be, 92 years old or however old she is. Bless her heart. I love
yeah,
Dolly Parton.
she's hysterical.
She's great. She's incredible. And you
She,
know what, Jeff?
I was watching a video, and it was at a concert, and some guy like yelled out, "Dolly, I love you," and she like just quick as he like was like, "Hey, you were supposed to stay in the trunk."
Classic Dolly. It's
Classic.
quite the opposite from Mitski, who someone yelled out, "I love you," and she just goes, "You don't know me."
Yeah.
So it's nice to have variety in life.
Yeah, that's and I feel like are we gonna get like a super depressing Mitski album next week?
Jeff, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think we're probably getting a very depressing Mitski
Yeah,
album.
hell yeah, let's get sad. I love it.
Can't wait.
Yeah,
Cannot wait. Unironically, cannot wait.
maybe we should both do some like ketamine beforehand so we can really.
There's a bug like an angel.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be what if it's just an hour and a half of just the saddest ballads you've ever heard.
I can't wait. I'm
Yeah,
gonna love it. I know that.
yeah. Oh well, I'd say yeah. I'm gonna say clearly buy it. I already did it. So I went specifically to the record store to grab this one, and I went to the CD section first. So I love getting me some used CDs. And Marla went found this one, and then she hands it to me, and there was another album right behind it, and it was the Olivia Rodrigo, and I was like, "Oh, you want to get this one too?" She just nods at me, just nods. She's like, "Yes."
All right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a fantastic album. I recommend going out and listening to both. If you're a country fan, you'll love Tyler Childers. If you're a pop fan, you're going to love Olivia Rodrigo. If you're a music fan, you're going to love them both. So go out there, buy them, support these artists because they are the ones doing some great things these days. Alex, do you have any closing thoughts for the people?
You know what, Jeff? I got one closing thought. Take care of yourselves and each other.
You don't mean that. Until next time.